root.
Okay, I'll show you where to find the other stuff. And I'll show you. You can eat this too, but it's not.
Welcome everyone to the Healthy 22nd Street demonstration garden workshop, and we got with us today, at your request, a workshop on healthy remedies using herbs and plants. So let me just give you a quick rundown. Carol Jones is an herbalist, educator, and environmental engineer living in eastern Hillsborough County. She's an instructor for Herbal Medics Academy and the Human Path, a sustainable medicine, food, and skills school based out of Texas and New Mexico. She also periodically speaks at the Plant City Commons Community Garden. So, welcome, Carol.
So a lot of the plants we actually add to our cooking, you know, are antibacterial, and they're helpful in that. So this one was rosemary, and we're going to talk a lot about rosemary today and how to preserve it and make medicines for it. How did you know it was rosemary beside the look of it? The smell, right? It's very aromatic. And a lot of plants, especially the mints, are very aromatic. The aromatic plants are helpful. One, they tend to be antimicrobial and antibacterial. And two, they help either lift our spirits or relax our nerves, right? So rosemary is one that actually has another really cool property about it, among all these other properties, is that it helps to stimulate what we call the cerebral blood circulation. So this is a plant that's very helpful for people that may have some cognitive issues coming on. And how can we use it? We can use it fresh in our cooking, dry in our cooking. We can actually make a tea with it and use it as a wash if we have an infection. And there's other ways, like making a tincture, that we're gonna learn how to do today to preserve that rosemary. And why I love it, because it's one of the plants that's hardy here, right? So many of these herbs that we buy from like up north, they just kind of croak on us, right? They don't do as well. But rosemary, and so I went out and got a whole bunch of herbs for us to practice on today, because mine are like in the ground and they're huge. You can buy rosemary in a lot of the garden centers, but it's not always the hardiest rosemary for here. So if you know somebody that has this rosemary bush that lives through our humid, hot summers and looks healthy, you can start your own rosemary plant from them. Do you guys know how to do that? Some of you do, all of you do, none of you do? Okay. And continue passing around those little bags and sharing them. I mean, you know, gathering them.
So we can have the potpourri.
It's the herb. Oh yeah. We're gonna taste them though. So rosemary is a woody shrub, and it has these really, the new tips are kind of flexible and bendable, and the wood on it's white. And the wood that's older is hard and brown. But usually if we cut it off, that flexible part, and you can strip off the lower leaves like this, carefully so you don't damage the stem. And this is something you can like cook with and dry at home for your own spice cabinet. But you see, I've stripped off the bottom of this one. And now if I have some moist potting soil in a pot and just stick this down and tap it in and maybe lightly water it every day, in a few weeks it'll have its own roots. And then you can plant it out to a bigger pot and then into your yard once it gets nice and healthy. Yeah.
How big will a rosemary bush get? Really big.
Really big. Yes, ma'am.
Suppose I have rosemary that I forgot in the refrigerator. I put it in the refrigerator and dried out. Should I just crunch it up now?
I would crunch it up.
Okay.
So the one thing about refrigerators is a lot of times they are dehydrating. So sometimes you'll put your fresh herbs in the fridge and they'll go brown and mucky and they're garbage, right? Some of them, like rosemary, want to dry so badly that you actually dehydrated them. All right, so do we got most of these sent out? All right.
I think most everyone that one got one.
All right, so what was this other one in the first bag? This one was the mint. Right, so this is actually spearmint. So the whole mint family, they all have their personalities and subtle differences and different things that they do. Spearmint is probably the mildest one for cooking with, and it's helpful. You can use it in a pinch like you would the others. Okay, so who all has this bag here? If you would open it up for me. Anybody else? Did you want one to try? You're welcome to it. Anybody else? Crunch it and smell it. And any guess what this might be? Everybody, some people are going, ooh, and some people are going, ooh. Okay. So this is actually another member of the family in a mint. Close, lots of guesses. But this one's a little different that you might not have seen. So this is related to basil. It's actually holy basil or tulsi. It's a mint. But it's a mint that does better in tropical environments like us. And people up north wish they could have it out in their garden without the cold weather killing it. So this is holy basil or tulsi, Tulsi. And I won't give you the botanical names because there's so many plants here. But this is something, if you guys are interested, we'll get some seeds started because it's not one you're going to find at Lowe's typically, but it lives very well here. Now, this mint makes a really great tea. It's calming and relaxing for our nerves. If it's one that we're stressed out, a lot of things are going on, it's sort of like one of those gentle hug, calm you down nerves. But it also is great for your digestion if your digestion's not working really well, you know, and there's a whole list of properties. So one of the biggest properties of herbs you may have heard about are adaptogens. They help us be more resilient and respond in better ways to the stresses that we all have, right? And this is one of those plants.
Will the regular basil, if you boil it and drink it as a tea, do the same, have the same?
Yeah, but it's like maybe the younger sibling in the family, but definitely, and that's like one of the points I was going to make, you know, the other basils. But this one, if you grow it, it's not going to be that scrumptious tasting. Do you guys know what basil tastes like? Yeah. Right? And it's pretty good. It's strong. It has that pungency and that aromatics. And that tells us aromatics is going to help relax us. All right? The pungency kind of stimulates us in some way. It's actually another one good for stimulating the brain circulation, right? So it's relaxing us emotionally, even in some of our tissues, but kind of stimulating that circulation, right? So if you had a test coming up in school, this would be probably a good one. And rosemary, but the tulsi is sort of like, I can't get to bed, I'm feeling a little pain, I'm feeling a little stressed. It's definitely the relaxer.
Can you mix it with a regular black tea?
Yes, and you can make it on your own, huh?
Why is it that color? Yeah, that's not like this color, like this baby.
Oh, so this is another variety, and it's just a variety that was bred to be purple, and you can save this one like have you ever made like basil vinegar? This is one of the ways to save it. It tints it green, but if you guys, we'll have a little bit of taste a little later, and you can taste it. And that one is the Genovese basil, and it gives you those beautiful big leaves that you can make pesto with and everything else. All right, so anybody that dares take a little bit of that green Tulsi basil and taste it, and chew it up.
I will.
Go ahead and tell me what it tastes like.
Where is it?
This one, the tall C. Just a little bit.
Okay, let's taste a little. I'll take a little bit.
So obviously drying's one of the ways we preserve, right?
It's not tasty at all.
It's kind of tingly, right? A little bitter aftertaste. That bitter taste, whether it's your lettuces or anything, that bitter taste is going to tell you that this is something that's going to help stimulate the digestion. And the bitter taste also is really good for fighting bugs. So, all right. So the next thing I want, what about the little green seeds? Kids, do you have a bucket with the little green seeds? Oh, you were so brave. There's only a couple of you. Just a little pinch it. So please, so the little green seeds is a fennel seed. And if you grow dill, you may be collecting dill seeds, right? So if you take one of these little seeds and chew on it, please. The brave people, chew it. This fennel's a lot better for you than that. If you don't like that, there's plenty else to try it.
We're gonna try it. I'll have
Where's the fennel?
I use fennel, I think, to stimulate lactation.
It's like licorice.
Yeah, you might have to trade somebody for bags because I brought probably 10 or 15 of you.
They're all over here.
Oh, good.
All right.
It tastes like licorice.
Okay, so the fennel tastes like licorice,
Yeah, the licorice.
right? And I think I brought some more fennel here. So fennel's a plant that up north, it sets seeds in its second year, but Florida throws them all out, just like dill. You plant dill the first year, if you get it early enough, it gives you flowers, it gives you seeds. And the seeds have a different taste. Dill doesn't taste like licorice, like fennel, but it has that aromatic. And those aromatic seeds are really good, like if you eat and you get really gassy after you eat, that aromatics kind of help move the gas out of your system. Or if you're cramping, you're having gut spasms, fennel's gonna do that. And some of you may have taken fennel to increase breast milk, increase secretions. It has that pungency that's gonna stimulate, and in this case, stimulate secretions, right?
Smells like
The
it.
one?
Yeah, that one's our fennel, right? And I have some extra bags and some of this stuff, so if you've missed out on it, we'll try to send you home with some. Okay, so what about the little fruity thing? Have you tasted the little fruity thing? Just one, that's all you need.
But there's this one here. Looks like raisins.
Yeah,
This one or that?
that one.
One smell like raisins.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
And kids usually like fennel.
That's really, yeah.
And actually you could even just, if you're after dinner, a lot of cultures, they just chew on a fennel or 2 or 3 to help settle their digestion.
What is the fruity thing?
So the fruity thing is actually a Japanese dogwood fruit. No, this one, right? This one that looks like dried raisins.
Yeah.
So what sort of taste does it have?
Cranberry.
Cranberry, right? Like cranberry. And what is that? Like a little sour,
Yeah.
right? So sour tasting herbs and things, actually they're tonics. They're really good for making our livers work better, our kidneys work better, our hearts work better, right? And I didn't have any roselle. Do any of you know what roselle is, or the floor? Right, so this taste should remind you of it. So we harvest the hibiscus, the roselle type that has the flowers, and then it makes a seed. And then we use what we call the calyx on the seed, and it's sour tasting, and it makes a great tea for improving your circulation, improving your heart. It's antioxidant, so like if you smoke and you have all that burden, it kind of counters the damage things like that do to your body.
What is this called?
That's a Japanese dogwood.
Japanese.
So we don't grow that here, but I didn't have roselle, and you can grow roselle,
It goes wild. It just takes over you.
right?
Just check with Julene if you need some. She can give you some. Bring us next time. Bring us some little, snips, and then people can take it home and root it.
Japanese dog.
Yeah. Cornus. Yeah. All right. So those of you that were brave for the last one, and some of you might recognize this, and there's more here.
What? Let's see that back again.
The potpourri looking one.
Yeah, we
Right?
Oh, no, I have that already. It's not dry.
Oh, well, you would probably want roselle because you could grow it. No, okay. So to head off questions, and there's a few more bags, people say potpourri, but do you know what this actually is?
Somebody needs this.
It's some
Rose leaves?
rose petals. It's actually the petals of the flower. Now, if you're brave enough, please take a very little bit and chew it and try to figure out what sort of taste that is. And this is the whole point, is when you're growing the herbs, you taste them and it kind of says, oh, this tastes pungent. I think it might help with my digestion, or it might settle my nerves. Anybody tell me what this kind of reminds you of when you're chewing it?
It tastes like cardboard.
It doesn't really have a taste.
What does your tongue feel like chewing it? Numb? Kind of like you just drank tea that's steeped too long?
Yeah.
That's astringency, or a persimmon fruit that isn't ripe yet. It dries up, everybody's tongue drying up now, and you're looking at me with like, why did you make me do that, Carol? So that's another personality of certain herbs. And when you know there's that personality, they're gonna tend to dry up things. If you have a weeping wound, the astringent herbs are gonna help dry it up. If you have diarrhea, right, and assuming you're taking enough water, astringent herbs are gonna help dry it up. Okay? So those are, huh?
Where does that come from?
So astringency?
No, the plant.
Oh, so this is a rose flower petals, and you can harvest them and dry them. Malik, can I borrow you for a second? Yeah, we're about to that. Good point. Let me find something, and I want to show you how to do it. So one way to preserve our harvest is to dry the plants. But some plants, when you dry them, they just, like that rose is actually a couple years old. And it barely has that sense of rose. And some, they lose it fast. Yeah, any rose, as long as somebody hasn't sprayed pesticides on it. All right? Let me make sure that's in there tight. So this is a rose tincture, where I actually used alcohol. So there's alcohol in here if you're sensitive to alcohol or you don't want alcohol.
What kind of alcohol are you talking about?
The strong stuff.
Drinking alcohol?
What is it?
Alcohol?
Yeah, drinking alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Right? So Malik, if you can like kind of, I'm gonna ask Malik to come around and give you like a couple drops on your hand if you don't mind, and taste that. Now there's alcohol if you can't take alcohol. So here's the lid for it. You can put it in a pocket.
Okay, cool.
You mean like vodka?
Yeah.
It smells familiar.
What do you
So this one, we took the fresh rose petals and we put it in with the alcohol and let it macerate in it for like 3 weeks, and then we strained it out. But it smells a lot more like rose, doesn't it? As well as alcohol. Okay. Rose? So rose petals are very astringent, right? So they're very healthy for the skin. And you can make a tea out of those and like do a nice skin wash out of it. If somebody's getting over like viral gastroenteritis and they're trying to clear up that diarrhea, you can make a tea and drink with that. But a lot of what I like it is for the skin, okay? And you can make a, so do you guys know how to make a tea with the dried herbs? Some do, some don't. Okay. Boil that water, pour the water over. Yeah, so, right. So if you're doing maybe a cup, I would use maybe a good healthy tablespoon of the dried herb. And it's not exact here, we're not doing exact. Put the herb in the cup, pour the hot water over it, cover it with a little plate so those volatile oils we talked about, right, don't escape. And something like the rose, you don't need to soak much more than 5 or 10 minutes. Some you can soak up to 4 hours. It depends on what you're trying to get out of it. And then you strain it. So if you buy like a little strainer and strain it, and then you can drink it. If you want to drink it hot, you can reheat it at that point. If you want it cold, you can put it in the fridge. The roselle we were talking about is really nice cold.
This is some good information, and you're going over so much of this. Do you have a list of what you're giving us now, what they do for you? Like, you know.
I should make a list and do it.
Yeah, put it on their website.
That'd be great.
Can I do what?
An elixir?
So, yeah, can you hold that question and remind me in like 5 minutes? And hopefully I won't get better. Yeah. You got the cap?
Yeah, I do.
You like that? So the rose you would mix in blends. Also, if you have heartache, it's really supportive of your heart. And it's also helps with the mental health, but its specialty is sort of like helping you get over that heartache. Or if you've had a traumatic experience, it's another one that it's sort of giving you that little extra hug to help you heal.
So you're not talking about a cardiac problem, you're talking about a heartache. Like
Actually, herbs don't know the boundaries people do. I'm talking about both. I'm talking about both. Okay? The physical heart and the soul heart, right? And the spiritual connection. All right. So, we dry herbs. We can tincture with alcohol. There's a lot of other things you can do. The basil we talked about, you can chop it up and freeze it for later. You can mix it with butter. You could dry it and mix it with salt and have a seasoning. But today I just wanted to focus on a few of them, like how I cut and dry plants here in Florida and how we can make a tincture. Okay, so I'll demonstrate that. I'll probably duck down under the camera a few times doing that. All right. So trust me, people either love Tulsi, the holy basil, they love the tea, or they hate the tea. And sometimes when you really need the support it gives you, you might have been a hater, but all of a sudden you become a lover of it. So it's interesting. So I found this at Lowe's, and I thought this would be great for our demonstration. And they're calling it sort of a bug bouncing, because it has really all these lemony scented type plants, right? And ants especially, but even mosquitoes tend not to like the lemony stuff. So I'm gonna shake. Can you smell it? You can touch, you can pinch, you can squeeze. Not me, the plant, please. Can you smell? Huh? You see some?
This is lemongrass.
Lemongrass. Okay.
Lemongrass, citronella.
Yeah, there's some citronella in here. You guys can all come up and here, we'll do a quick round.
Malik's gonna help out.
Let everybody squeeze and smell this one. Okay, so here's how I usually dry it. Now, most of the plants that we have here, they dry pretty well. If we have air-conditioned house, it kind of takes a lot of the humidity out of the air. The only thing in the summertime, if it's a really moist herb, you know, it might not dry as completely. And you might have to baby it more. So, a plant like this is starting to kind of get overgrown. And I would trim it. And I usually don't take the needles off of the rosemary until it's dry. And after I dry it, I'll take it off because I don't want to damage it. Because if you bruise your leaves too much, I really send rosemary your way, right? Okay, so here's the way. Just, you can cut up a cardboard box, or if you find a cardboard box that's clean. And then you can line them so they're not touching inside. And then you can make another layer and line more plants. And then make another layer like that, right? And then check them every couple days and turn them and make sure they get there. That's the simplest one. You might be able to use some old clean screens and do something similar. But I found the cardboard boxes like that are really easy. Or a flat piece somewhere it won't be knocked over. Okay.
And you said this can be.
Oh, that's a great point. No, I try not to put it in the sun. If you want to do it outside, especially in the winter time, where we have lower humidity, put it like on a patio. Inside's probably better, and there's ways to get around it if you guys don't have air conditioning, so reach out and there's other strategies.
Can you put them in the oven? Okay.
So you can do the oven, but if you do a very hot temperature, it's actually going to start cooking it and blowing off all those great volatile oils, right?
So what's a good temperature in the oven?
Well, actually, if you have a food dryer, like an Excalibur is what they're called, it's the absolute lowest setting, and it's like 100 degrees, so it's really hard to control that in the dryer. Okay, so the lemony plants. So lemongrass is one of those that you can cook with the real fat stalks at the bottom, but it's also one of those that really uplifting, sort of relax your nerves tea. And I'll just dry the leaves like this, and when they're dry, I might cut them in pieces, like that, right?
Make a tea out of
I like to make a tea. You boil, so when you make a tea or an infusion, you boil the water, you put the water over it. You don't boil these. Things you do boil are like roots and bark and thing that's really hard.
And when you boil it, it's a great air freshener for your house. It fills up the whole house.
There you go, lemongrass. And you guys can ask and I can trim some. So I got this planter because I saw, you guys being gardeners might see, this catnip is overgrown. Herbs like to be trimmed back, throw some fertilizer on it and let them put out new leaves. Pretty soon it'll start flowering and you won't get great flowers. So catnip's easy for us to grow, and it's a different tasting mint, but it's really good if you have an upset stomach. It's one of the best things for kids if they're cranky and crying and won't get to sleep, right? It's relaxing mint. It helps to stop the spasms in the tummy. Now you can make a tea with the fresh if you have it out in your yard, or you can dry the plant, or we can make, and it does attract cats. So the ones in my yard have a rabbit wire over top of them. And if it grows enough to grow out the rabbit wire, well, the cats chew on it. But if you don't protect it from the cats, they will destroy, right? No, so most cats actually, catnip kind of is a euphoric to them. It kind of gets them high. The rest of the cats, it doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't do the same thing to people.
No, I'm talking about for the cat.
Oh, yeah. So I kind of want to show the camera, but what I'm going to do is show you two things with mints, right? So let's pull big stem. Right? And you can actually trim the bottom leaves off of this, sort of like we did with the rosemary, and put it in some water and let it get a little rooty and plant it, right? So anytime we're harvesting, we want to look and make sure the leaves are good, there's no bugs, there's no disease, right? And then you just clean through it. Oh, this one doesn't look good. You know, if it's too beat up, you don't want it, right? And we would just lay it and dry it. So there's another way you can dry plants. After you've cleaned them, right? I'm taking all the nastier. See that? You know what that is?
Oh,
You've seen it, right?
yeah. I can't think of the name.
Little leaf miner.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make medicine with that leaf. Okay? So it goes in the compost. So you can bundle the stems, and these are really like weird shape, and put a rubber band around it and hang it somewhere in the house. And the rubber band, as it dries, it shrinks. The rubber band will shrink with it. And then when it's nice and crispy, just take the leaves off of it. These stems are soft, we could do that. So here you can explore what catnip smells like. Trust me, it's not as nice as the peppermint. It's not even as nice as the tulsi, but it makes great medicine. And if you guys want me to come back, we can work on a workshop to make some things like with glycerids that are a little more child-friendly than alcohol tinctures, right? And for people that are sensitive to alcohol. Okay?
You grabbed something.
Did I? Yeah. So I'm gonna trim this plant really good and make some medicine with that. I'll dry some and then dried stuff. I like to keep in glass jars out of the sun, right? And so here's some peppermint that my friend actually grew. And it's a little older, so I can share if you guys want some. And here's that fennel seed. And the sunlight's kind of like, it's gonna bleach out your herbs. So you wanna protect it from heat and sunlight. And close it up good from air and all.
Do they use fennel seed in like pizza sauce?
Yeah, so fennel seed's part of Italian sausage, usually, right? So, and what's it gonna help? So sausage is heavy and greasy, right? And if you're sensitive, you're really feeling the sausage. But that little bit of fennel is gonna help your body digest that greasy, fatty stuff better. And that's how a lot of our recipes came together, right? Okay, so I have two more things if you guys can bear with me, and then we can just like play, right? All right. So we talked about, and I'm coming up to your question, right? So yeah, this is my moonshine. This is 195 proof. Oh, that's peppermint. Open it up and smell it, you'll know.
That should be good, boy.
Yeah, you're not drinking this without hurting, right? So a lot of times when I mix this, I actually blend it with clean filtered water. It's just cheaper for me to get this and blend it down. But, so if somebody's talking about 100 proof vodka, for example, nice clear liquid, what percent of that's actually alcohol? 100 proof.
100%.
No. Proof means double what the actual percentage is. So that 100 proof vodka is 50% alcohol and 50% water. So you're buying half a bottle of water. Okay. 80 proof. What's 80 proof vodka? 40. Yeah, easy stuff. This is 95% drinking alcohol, which we use to make and extract all of these properties of the plants we've been talking about. And we do that so we can preserve it. And if you guys smelled or tasted that rose tincture, rather than drying those flowers, those petals, because they lose their potency. The ones you have are, you know, they're like 2 years old, they're kind of not as strong. This would keep the potency. It's a way to preserve, okay? Especially plants that, so how do we use this? Now
really quickly, you just buy that proof alcohol, like
I buy it by big bunches because I'm an herbalist. But you guys can use 100 proof, 80 proof, 151, 153, okay? So depending on what we're trying to do with the plant, we use the different percentages.
but it's like a total wine or where?
Huh? This is sugar alcohol made from sugar. You could do like corn alcohol, wheat alcohol, grape alcohol. All right. So the one thing you don't want to do is do this with rubbing alcohol because that's poison. If you make something with it, it's for the skin, it's not for... No, this is pure alcohol that distilleries made, okay? Now, I'm gonna put, so I use the strong stuff when I'm trying to preserve a really moist plant, because the alcohol is going to pull that water and that essence out of the plant, and it's going to dilute it down and end up being 80 proof or 40%, right? If I start with 60 proof, which is 30% alcohol, and put it in a really moist, watery herb, all that extra water is going to come in, and there might not be enough alcohol to preserve it, and it might get mold and stuff like that. All right? So usually 20% alcohol in the final blend, and obviously it's hard to figure out how much, right? It's pretty hefty. I wouldn't drink this like this for sure. But 20% is sort of a safe amount. Now, you can use 20% alcohol, like a vodka that's 40 proof, remember it's twice as much, on dry stuff. So I can make a tincture from that tulsi that's dried, or from that dry fennel seed, right? Now, there's other ways to preserve, and it's with extracting it in vinegar, extracting it in honey, or glycerate, which a lot of people do, and I'd love to have a workshop on that with you guys. Glycerate's really sweet, but it's also thick sort of alcohol. But you can use your alcohol and water. That's usually what we use. It's so much alcohol, so much water, and add something sweet to it like honey, or maybe you start out with a little brandy and you end up with an elixir, right? Okay, so.
But not any type honey.
Any type honey.
What's the difference between a tincture
And do something similar to that, because when I was growing up, this lady, she used to take fruit.
Yep, like chopped up oranges and lemons and stuff. Yeah, and you can do it with like raspberries, and you just have to be careful about how much water it is. If you don't think it's enough alcohol, you keep it in the fridge, right? And that gives you more storage. Yeah, so it depends on what it is. Some of these plants will fight off the bacteria on their own too, right?
Question over here.
Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering the difference between an elixir and a tincture.
An elixir also has something sweet in it. A tincture is usually water and alcohol, and an elixir is done with something sweet. And then some people get fancy and do like brandy, so it's a nice tasting. And usually the taste is also sweet and soothing and nourishing. All right, I know I'm starting to run over, so let's see what we have left to do. So I'm gonna do a field tincture for you guys.
We're absolutely dying to find out what this is.
It's dying, waiting for you guys to find out too. So let's get some catnip tincture started, and if there's time and you guys have time, we can make some more, okay? So what do? For fresh catnip, you can harvest it, make sure there's no dirt, bad leaves, dried leaves, right? These are kind of on the old side, so. And then you either use scissors or a knife, and you cut up the pieces in the small pieces, because you want to break it up so it has good contact with that water and alcohol mix. And I'm gonna do it like, we'll do it better when we break out. And then like I said, for catnip, your 80 or 100 proof would be more than plenty. Okay.
Because it's a drier.
It's a drier plant. And then I would chop it up even finer than this. Ugh. Waste of, okay. And I basically want to get it so that the leaves are covered. And I could squish down more leaves in this, but I'm not going to. Okay, so chop it as fine as you can. If it's the seeds, the fennel seeds, get a mortar and pestle or crush it up first, right? And if it's dry to begin with, you don't need as much. Like the dried plant can be a little bit lower. But if it's fresh, like this catnip, you want to make sure in either way that all the plant material's submerged. Okay. And we give it a good shake every couple of days, and that's just to keep everything mixed in there. Like I said, I would take the time to cut this a little finer. And we would let it soak like this for a couple of weeks at a minimum. It can go more if you forget about it.
Is it better the longer or not?
So in the first couple of weeks, the medicinal compounds are gonna extract, and then it's pretty much all extracted. It'll still get a little bit better, but it's sort of like, it's plateauing, right? And then I would like say, I would label this. I would say catnip, today's date, so I know how long it's been sitting in my shelf. And the green's gonna like leach out of it first. And then if you haven't labeled it, and I've done this a lot, you say, what's this in the back? And it's like, is this basil? Is this catnip? I don't know, right? What's it good for? So this is something if you want to improve your digestion, if you're gassy and bloaty after you eat, if you're really upset, like emotionally, like especially like children where they can't settle themselves down, kind of that tantrum keeps going on, or just anybody that wants a little extra help sleeping, you would then take one of those droppers or a teaspoon and maybe put it in some warm water. If you're brave, you can take it straight, but you can always mix it in a little water or juice. Yeah, so definitely I'll send something over that has a lot of what we looked at. The biggest takeaway here is, so this is the first step, right? So I did bring something else, and it's been sitting on my shelf unlabeled for way too long, but I know which one this is. And you can see some of the alcohol actually evaporated for this ring. So if I was paying attention, I would have smashed it all down and got it underneath. Maybe added a little more of the alcohol water blend, right? So I'll show you what to do after it's been soaking for, like 9 months. But 2 weeks is more than enough. Now remember, you can always make fresh teas or cheese with the dried stuff. You don't have to go through all this. But what that's gonna end up is something that's shelf stable, that'll actually be good for like 10 years. Wow. Yeah, right? So if you're growing a plant that maybe you're not growing the next year and it's valuable as medicine, you can make a couple years at a time. And then it's not gonna go bad. How's our time?
So let's see what questions we have, because you've done some things with herbs, and maybe you want to just check that, with Carol.
Oh yeah.
About something that your family does with herbs, and you just wanted to make sure it's not too weird to do or something.
Yeah, I can do that. And while I'm listening, I'm actually going to filter out some of that rosemary. So,
Okay. So
anybody have questions?
Should we be concerned about any interactions between herbal medicine and like prescribed medication?
Ah, that's a great question, and I kind of brought something to help us understand that a little bit better.
something I can help you with?
So where is that rosemary?
Okay.
Does somebody want to help me with this? Kitty is. So yeah, for the most part, there's no interactions with medicines, but there is some plants that definitely will interact. Now, so there's some plants that you have a cup of tea and it'll literally drop your blood sugar by like 30 points. So obviously, if you're somebody that's taking medicine to control your blood sugar, that's not an herb you want to take a whole tea, if any of.
What herb is that?
Oh, there's a few of them.
Oh.
There's a few of them. That one's going to be in the desert. So you just filter this out, and I'm just going to pour a little bit of it.
What are you using? Yeah. What paper?
Good questions. You can cap that when that's done draining.
Cap it. Put it on
And if it's the catnip, you could use something here. Yeah. All right. So what I use in here, this is called Chemex. They sell them. It's like a coffee pour over filter, but you could use a coffee filter,
like a
right?
double.
double coffee.
And if you have something like the catnip where you're going to want to squeeze all that precious, you know, you pay a lot for your alcohol and stuff. Use something like cheesecloth, butter, or those milk cloths. So you can see how fine it is. I'm just passing this around, pass it around the other way. So you see it's taken a little bit, but it's dripping, right? So I would put this on the counter and, yeah, and label it. And you see nice color? That would be good for 10 years. And so I could use it as I need it.
And what's the rosemary good for then?
Okay, so rosemary does a lot of things. So it helps battle infections. It helps us breathe better. It helps with inflammation. It helps stimulate our cerebral circulation, so it keeps our brain healthy. So if you take dried sage and dried rosemary, and you pour boiling water over it and make a steam, like put a towel over your head and breathe that in, that's excellent for a sinus infection, right? That's one way.
Is that good for kids too with allergies?
Excellent for them. So,
But it has to be sage and rosemary.
there's a whole bunch of other ones, so maybe I'll put together yeah. All right, so.
How much of an amount? What amount would you put if you want to do
To do the steam, you really don't need a lot. A couple, probably more like a tablespoon in a quart. And I'll just do mine in a quart jar and just like put a towel around it so I don't burn myself and do that. I like mason jars. So while this drains, do we have any other questions?
Any other questions?
Because there's two final points.
real quick storage?
Yeah.
So to store so that it becomes your finished product, is that a cool dry place? Is that a windowsill?
Oh.
How do you differentiate which herbs go in the windowsill versus cool dry?
Okay, so all the herbs and the tinctures, what they don't like is oxygen, air, and heat, and sunlight. So if you have a cabinet you can put them in that's not on top of your stove, that's going to be the best. And they even sell like brown jars to kind of help knock down the sun exposure, right? And definitely.
And I know you mentioned that you could take a dropper and put it in some warm water. Could you put it in tea, like any other tea?
Oh yeah. You can put it in orange juice and everything. All right, so everybody's asking me what's in the bucket. So a lot of the plants that if you read in herbal catalogs or herbal books, we can't grow them here. You know, we can buy them, but we can't grow them. So one of my big things is figuring out what we do have. And a lot of the plants that grow in the islands grow here, but you know, all the books aren't really written about that. So talking to people from other customs that are used to the plants that we grow here is one great way to learn. So I have some weeds here. And as usual, I'm going to pass around weeds because I told you guys I'm really hands-on. And if anybody recognizes this, tell me if you know what that is. Okay. It does have a flower on it. No, but so close. Oh, so close. Okay. Whoops, sorry. So if you're brave on this, you can take a leaf and chew it and tell me what sort of texture it gives you.
So it's not poisonous, right, Carol?
Nah.
So if you're chewing the leaf, what is
But you got to chew it up really good until it gets kind of like mushy, mucilaginous. Nah. So this is called Sida. Sida, S-I-D-A, without the, right? Some people call it wireweed. It's the one if you're running through your yard barefoot and it gets in between your, or you try to pull it up, it doesn't want to pull up. And we have a bunch of it in the grass along the street. Okay, I can show you what the flowers look like. They're little yellow flowers. You see the very low one growing all through the grass? Oh, we'll talk to it next. That's a different plant. All right, So up north, people use marshmallow root, and it's real moistening. Like if you're maybe having some incontinence issues, your urinary tract tissues aren't very toned. If you're having GERD, you know, you're trying to heal the mucosa, they'll say marshmallow root, but it's really difficult to grow that here. What we have is Cytorhombifolia. It's really mild. You can dry this very easily. When you find it, just hang it. Like I said, you got to look at the leaves on the bottom because this close to summer, you're starting to see little mold spots. So you always want to pick through before you set things to dry or make tinctures. And this will dry very quickly, hung up or laid on your cardboard box. And then all I do is when it's dried, I crumble it, put it in a jar for safekeeping, and make a tea out of it. And it's very moistening, nutritive, really supporting your tissues. And especially like me at a certain age, I'm starting to dry out a little more. So yeah, right? Now, and I have a favorite combination. So some of you guessed it, and now it looks terrible. Do you guys recognize this plant that grows everywhere?
Oh yeah.
This is our Bidens, right? People pay good money for it. And it's one of those plants that when you dry it, there's not really a lot of medicinal. But we have it. You can eat it. It's edible completely.
And you have the little stickies all over you.
And you have the beggar ticks on you. That's exactly this plant.
Away from your plant, your garden.
So, yes, sir. I'll dig up the nutritional profile, but this is actually very highly nutritious, kind of a higher protein content.
Interesting.
Some animals, like goats, should not really eat either of these. My horse, I can't keep her away from this. But definitely, if you want to explore this, this is one of those, just make sure it's not like getting sprayed or too close to traffic, right?